Okay, and I have only one real message in this lecture, and that is consciousness is a biological phenomenon like photosynthesis, digestion, mitosis. You know all the biological phenomena. And once you accept that, most, though not all, of the hard problems about consciousness simply evaporate. And I'm going to go through some of them. I haven't yet given you a definition. You can't do this if you don't give a definition. People always say consciousness is very hard to define. I think it's rather easy to define if you're not trying to give a scientific definition. We're not ready for a scientific definition, but here's a common sense definition. Consciousness consists of all those states of feeling or sentience or awareness. It begins in the morning when you wake up from a dreamless sleep, and it goes on all day till you fall asleep or die or otherwise become unconscious. Dreams are a form of consciousness on this definition. Consciousness. All of our conscious states, without exception, are caused by lower-level neurobiological processes in the brain, and they are realized in the brain as higher-level or system features. It's about as mysterious as the liquidity of water, right? The liquidity is not an extra juice squirted out by the H2O molecules. It's a condition that the system is in. And just as the jar full of water can go from liquid to solid, depending on the behavior of the molecules, so your brain can go from a state of being conscious to a state of being unconscious, depending on the behavior of the molecules. The famous mind-body problem is that simple. How can it be that this thought in my brain can move material objects? Well, I'll tell you the answer. We know, we don't know the detailed answer, but we know the basic part of the answer, and that is there are a sequence of neuron firings, and they terminate where the acetylcholine is secreted at the axon end plates of the motor neuron. Sorry to use philosophical terminology here, but when it's secreted at the axon end plates of the motor neurons, a whole lot of wonderful things happen in the ion channels, and the damned arm goes up. Now, think of what I told you. One and the same event, my conscious decision to raise my arm, has a level of description where it has all of these touchy-feely spiritual qualities. It's a thought in my brain, but at the same time it's busy secreting acetylcholine and doing all sorts of other things as it makes its way from the motor cortex down through the nerve fibers in the arm. Now, what that tells us is that our traditional vocabularies for discussing these issues are totally obsolete. One and the same event has a level of description where it's neurobiological and another level of description where it's mental, and that's a single event, and that's how nature works. That's how it's possible for consciousness to function causally. Their existence is observer relative. It's only relative to conscious agents that a piece of paper is money or that a bunch of buildings is a university.
At any rate, what is consciousness? What is a conscious mind? And we could take a very simple view and say, well, it is that which we lose when we fall into deep sleep without dreams, or when we go under anesthesia, and it is what we regain when we recover from sleep or from anesthesia. And it's quite clear that in order to make minds, we need to construct neural maps. So imagine a grid like the one I'm showing you right now, and now imagine within that grid, that two-dimensional sheath, imagine neurons. And picture, if you will, a billboard, a digital billboard where you have elements that can be either lit or not. And depending on how you create the pattern of lighting or not lighting the digital elements, or for that matter, the neurons in the sheath, you're going to be able to construct a map. This is, of course, a visual map that I'm showing you, but this applies to any kind of map, auditory, for example, in relation to sound frequencies, or to the maps that we construct with our skin in relation to an object. And in that image there, you see a variety of islands of what I call image-making regions in the brain. You have the green, for example, that corresponds to tactile information, or the blue that corresponds to auditory information. And something else that happens is that those image-making regions where you have the plotting of all these neural maps can then provide signals to this ocean of purple that you see around, which is the association cortex, where you can make records of what went on in those islands of image making. And the great beauty is that you can then go from memory, out of those association cortices, and produce back images in the very same regions that had perception. So think about how wonderfully convenient and lazy the brain is. So it provides certain areas for perception and image making, and those are exactly the same that are going to be used for image making when we recall information. We generate brain maps of the body's interior and use them as the reference for all other maps. So let me tell you just a little bit about how I came to this. I came to this because if you're going to have a reference that we know as self, the me, the I in our own processing, we need to have something that is stable, something that does not deviate much from day to day. Just to tell you that in that red section of the brainstem, there are, to make it simple, all those little squares that correspond to modules that actually make brain maps of different aspects of our interior, different aspects of our body. They are exquisitely topographic, and they are exquisitely interconnected in a recursive pattern. And it is out of this, and out of this tight coupling between the brainstem and the body, that I believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, that you generate this mapping of the body that provides the grounding for the self, and that comes in the form of feelings. Primordial feelings, by the way. So what is the picture that we get here? Look at cerebral cortex, look at brainstem, look at body, and you get a picture of the interconnectivity in which you have the brainstem providing the grounding for the self in a very tight interconnection with the body. You cannot have a conscious mind if you don't have the interaction between cerebral cortex and brainstem. You cannot have a conscious mind if you don't have the interaction between the brainstem and the body. Another thing that is interesting is that the brainstem that we have is shared with a variety of other species. So throughout vertebrates, the design of the brainstem is very similar to ours.
Eu consegui um encontro no Central Park com o médico-chefe da UTI, Dr. Sam Parnia. Eu sei que você fez uma quantidade enorme de pesquisas sobre o assunto. Sam estudou mais de 100 sobreviventes de paradas cardíacas. Pessoas que estavam tecnicamente mortas e que voltaram à vida. Algumas delas voltaram com profundas experiências.
Nós sabemos, de verdade, que por milhares de anos as pessoas que chegaram perto da morte, por qualquer motivo, tiveram essas experiências profundas e, de certa forma, uma experiência mística. As pessoas têm uma imensa sensação de paz e de conforto, então alegria quando passam pela morte. Eles podem descrever uma sensação de encontrar parentes mortos, amigos e outras pessoas que eles não conhecem, mas que parecem estar dando boas-vindas a elas. Então acho que estamos começando a entender que existe uma experiência universal de morte que a maioria de nós provavelmente vai experimentar.
Mesmo sem atividade cerebral, as pessoas voltam contando essas experiências. Tem como isso ser explicado?
É importante compreender que, quando uma pessoa está morrendo e se torna um cadáver, é só nesse momento que as células dentro do corpo começam a passar pelo processo da morte, o que pode levar horas, se não até dias. E, na verdade, temos esse espaço de tempo em que podemos trazer a pessoa de volta à vida. E as experiências que elas tiveram nos dão uma indicação de como e quando a humanidade passa pela morte. Hoje em dia chamamos a alma de consciência na ciência. Então podemos testar essa teoria científica e ver se essa consciência continua ou se ela acaba. Isso prova, pelo menos, que quando uma pessoa morre, essa parte que nos torna o que somos, a psique, a alma, a mente, a consciência, ou como você quiser chamar, ela não é aniquilada. Ela não desaparece no ar, ela continua pelo menos no início da morte.
É sério?
Com certeza. Ela continua quando o cérebro não deveria estar funcionando e quando uma pessoa está passando pela morte.
A experiência fora do corpo é algo muito curioso, porque o sujeito relata que percebeu a sua consciência distante do seu corpo físico. Muitas vezes os sujeitos relatam que estão quase que no teto, e aí eles veem o corpo lá embaixo, na cama, ou numa mesa de cirurgia. Portanto, uma experiência que demonstraria para o sujeito uma separação entre mente e corpo. E quase sempre, quando ele narra essa experiência, há uma interpretação imediata, e eu diria até intuitiva, de que, de fato, ele vai dizer assim, eu saí do meu corpo, de fato, e me vi lá de cima, e meu corpo estava lá embaixo, portanto, isso demonstra para mim a separabilidade entre mente e corpo. A psicologia anomalística, ela vai, digamos, decompor, ela vai fazer uma certa diferenciação entre aquilo que é narrado, a descrição pura e simples da experiência, juntamente com a decomposição desta interpretação que acompanha essa experiência. Isso é algo muito difícil, porque é como querer, digamos, entender um quadro ou ver uma pintura separando tinta da tela. É quase que impossível fazer isso.
Existe consciência sem cérebro, mas também não existe consciência sem corpo. Nós existimos, digamos, naturalmente em vários estados, em vários níveis de ativação desse sistema de recompensa.